Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever it is that you are, wherever you may be. Thank you very much for making us a part of your day. I am Brad Franklin, creative content writer here in Chesterfield, and I'm very glad to tell you that Chesterfield Behind the Mic is on the air once again. As you can see, we are no longer in the confines of our comfy studio over in the admin building. Instead, we're here at Central Library. We're here to talk about Library Bots, which is a pretty cool program that I'm really excited to feature on the podcast. First, I want to welcome Kasey Tross, who is a mentor, coach, person who helps all the kids. Welcome to the podcast, Kasey. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks for having us.
Very glad to have you. Obviously, for folks who are new to this, we're going to try to do our best to explain it. And by us, I mean you. I'm going to do my best to stay out of the way. In a general sense, what's going on back here, right? Like what goes on in this space for these kids, for this team?
Okay, so what we have here is a First Tech Challenge team, and they are part of a team that's under the umbrella of First. There's also First Robotics Challenge, First Lego League. First Tech Challenge is for kids that are in 7th through 12th grade. Right. So it works really nicely for a community team like this one because we have kids from middle school and high school over here. And basically what they do is every year in September, First issues their tech challenge for the year. Right. And what the team has to do starting in September, once they learn what the game is that their robot has to play, then they have to design the robot that can play that game. So it'd be kind of like if they said, well, we want your robot to be able to play basketball, but it's never a normal game like basketball. It's a game that they come up with. Right. So this year it involved delivering blocks and balls to a 3-tiered stand. It also involved some things with rubber ducks. We have kind of an abbreviated version going on the field here behind us. Right. But yeah, they had to design a robot that could do all the tasks needed to earn points in the game. All right.
Now, year to year, for the kids who come back, how similar are these challenges year to year?
They can vary widely. So, for example, this year we had some obstacles on the field. So they had some bars on the field that the robot had to get over, along with delivering the blocks and balls. Right. There have been games in years past where the robot has to hook onto an object and lift itself up. Oh, wow. Times when they've had to climb up an incline, stack things on top of each other. There was one year like giant Lego blocks they had to stack on top of each other. Fun. Yeah, so it varies widely, but they try to make it so that every challenge is somehow kind of a version of something that robots might need to do in real life. Right. So this year's challenge was called Freight Frenzy. Okay. So we know that there's a lot of issues with shipping going on right now.
I was going to say very topical.
Very, yeah. They usually try and do that. And so they decided to make a game that involved shipping elements and how you might need to deliver various shipping elements to different places. So.
Right. In terms of the robot itself, how much time, ballpark, between when they get the challenge and when you actually get to a place for competition?
Well, let's see. So they start in September. They usually start off meeting once a week. Okay. I'll just be real honest. They start off meeting once a week for 3 hours. September, I would say the first few weeks is a lot of design and prototyping. Right. So that's, 12 hours or so of that. Okay. Starting in October, they start going, whoa, we better get this robot together. So we might meet twice a week. Right. So 6 hours.
Business picks up a little bit.
Another 24 hours or so in November. In December, that's when we usually have our first competition. Okay. And we will be in here every day for 3 hours a day. So it's a quite time-intensive thing, but it's great for the kids because they have to learn a lot about time management.
Right, yeah, for sure. Yeah. And I would imagine, too, that it's not just, coming together and building something. It's doing it as a team, right? Which is one of the big points of this whole entire thing. I know in our previous conversation you mentioned that it's not just about, the competition aspect is not just what you do on the field. There's also the way you do it. Talk to me a little bit about sort of gracious professionalism and why that's such a big deal.
Yeah, gracious professionalism is one of the core tenets of First. Okay. And you'll notice when you're at a First competition that you're not going to see anybody yelling at a ref. You're not going to see team members getting mad at each other. Right. Because gracious professionalism is the standard by which every team is judged. Are you gracious? Are you professional? Right. So we try to cultivate that atmosphere here in the library as we're working because we want that to translate to competition. Right. So if you're at a competition and another team, their robot isn't working, you might offer some help. You might say, if somebody says, hey, we forgot our duct tape, can we borrow some? You'll say, absolutely. Right. And again, this is just another way that First tries to mimic a real world environment. You're not going to survive long professionally if you're yelling at your colleagues.
That's true.
Yeah, so it's a really great way to prepare them for real life.
Right. Now, in terms of the materials, I'm curious. Can you essentially, when they give you the challenge, how specific are they in terms of what the robot should be? Are all of them, when you see them in a competition, are they just all vastly different, or are they very similar?
They're all vastly different. That's one of the fun things about going to a competition, because we're, working in our own little bubble for the first, couple of months. And then we get out there and your eyes just get open like, oh, we never thought of doing it that way. So it's a really cool way to collaborate. But they do have very specific rules about what is allowed, materials that are allowed and that aren't. So there's a few different brands that we use, like Tetrix, and I can't remember the other one off the top of my head.
That's okay.
But but then there's also a list of prohibited materials. Like there's certain kind of magnets that you can't use and things like that could interfere with other robots.
Gotcha. Now, in terms of, for folks who are watching or listening, how do you control the thing? Like what goes into not just, building it to make it do whatever it does for that specific challenge, but I'm just curious, how would you explain what goes into the controls of the actual robot?
See, that's a really good question. I'm going to be honest with you. I don't know anything about robots. But this is, again,
I would think that you would pick something up every once in a while.
This is, again, another great thing about FIRST. I am a mentor, and I help them with marketing and outreach, so that's another aspect of FIRST. But I do encourage you to ask them when they come up here about how the robot works. I do know that it involves a phone.
It involves a phone.
Yes, I do know that much, and I know that it involves Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
And that's all that I know.
Well, then let's focus on this. Yeah. How did you get involved in this? How did you become a mentor, right?
So my son, when he was, it was the summer before 7th grade, he went to a governor's school for robotics that they had. And it was just a summer program, and he did a robotics thing there. It was just for like a week or two. But he came out of it just loved robots and just wanted to, he's always loved building, always loved Lego. And so we were at a craft fair or something, and I think the library bots had a table set up there, and we met them, and we realized, they're really close. So I started just dropping him off at meetings, and I had no idea what they were doing with him there. I just was glad that he was, having fun. Every time he came home, he had a big smile on his face. And then I went to the first competition, and I was like, oh, I get it now. Like, this is really cool.
Yeah.
And so I got excited about it, and then I started helping out with the team, because, again, I'm not into robots really. But it got me excited about it because of the things that it was teaching him and the confidence it was giving him. And I just saw that the way, the positive interaction that the kids had. And so it was something I knew I wanted to be a part of. Right.
Now, in terms of, mentoring and being a kind of a team leader for the group, you mentioned marketing and outreach. Tell me a little bit about just what that side of the mentoring is.
So the cool thing too about FIRST is that we all know that technology is really finicky, right? Like, you can do all the work in the world and get out there on the field, and then just something goes horribly wrong that you never could have prepared for. And that can be really frustrating. So a great part of the FIRST program is that there are ways that teams can advance that don't directly have to do with how well their robot performed on the field. So some of those include how well you connect with your local STEM community. So one of the programs that we have is called Library Bot for a Day. We invite professionals that are engineers or scientists or something in the STEM community. We invite them to come and be a part of our team for a day. And what that does is it lets the kids get to know the kinds of job opportunities and career opportunities that are available in STEM. But it also is great for them because they get a fresh face in there. And they can be like, we're having this issue with our robot. And even if they don't know exactly how the robot works, they're usually really good at asking good questions and making good comments. We had an engineer, somebody who worked on aircraft carriers, on the launch systems for aircraft carriers. And she came in and they were talking to her about how they were having a hard time with, they had to rebuild some motors on the robot. And she said to them, well, how confident are you in your rebuild? And they kind of looked at each other, and she's like, you might want to think about that. And so, you get that real world perspective again. So that's great. And then the other aspect of it is outreach in our community. So we try to make sure that we letting people in the community know that this program exists,
Right.
so that those kids that are growing up that might not be into traditional sports, they know that there's a place for them.
Right.
And so outreach is a big part of that, our community outreach, and also giving them opportunities to just have fun with STEM.
Right, yeah.
So being in the library, it's great because we have a lot of opportunities to do that.
Yeah. Now, in terms of the growth, so to speak, I know you guys just went to competition, which we'll talk about in a minute. But I'm just curious, as you've seen, not just your own son, but the other team members throughout the year, right? From those early September days when it wasn't kind of as pressing, and then all of a sudden you get to the winter and it's like, okay, we kind of need to get moving on this. How have you seen them grow and change, and what do you feel is the best thing about sort of this program that brings out of those kids?
I think one of the best things for us this year, one of the things that you notice throughout a competition season, there are a lot of ups and a lot of downs.
Right.
And I think it really teaches the kids resilience. They learn how to ride those ups and downs. They learn how to say, hey, we did a great job on this,
Right.
or you know what, we could work harder on this.
Mm-hmm.
And I see how the setbacks, they don't get disappointed. They're initially disappointed, but then they go, we can do better.
Right.
And they get excited and they
Right.
want to try harder. So I think it really fosters that growth mindset. They're always trying to think ahead. And it's exciting to watch that process happen,
Right.
even when things don't go their way. They're just always looking for a way to improve and make it better. And having each other, I think, really helps because they really kind of support each other in that
Right.
way.
I can imagine through everything that has happened in the world these last few years, the opportunity to have them back together, to be able to do something like this, that not just a sense of normalcy, but that sense of connection was really good for them. How would you kind of compare what you've seen from them this year compared to maybe previous years?
Well, this year's been fantastic because, again, we were able to have at least one normal competition. Our district championship was a normal competition. But in the past years, the last 2 years, it was just really challenging.
Yeah.
I could tell that they missed that
Right.
interaction.
Right.
Having them back together, it was just kind of like a breath of fresh air.
Right.
We came into the library and we looked on the sign-in sheet, and we were the last ones here in March of 2020. And
wow.
we were our last sign-in. We're like, oh, look, there we were. But at the same time, they exhibited that same resilience over the last couple of years. They did everything over Zoom or over Discord.
Yeah.
But it was challenging. There wasn't that, because they weren't able to interact with other teams, especially, there wasn't that motivation that was pushing them to do better. They would go to a couple competitions that, only 3 or 4 team members were allowed to go.
Right.
And then we did them remotely, and it just was not that
Not
same
quite
feeling.
the same, yeah. Now, you mentioned districts. I want to talk a little bit about this hardware here.
All right.
Take me through sort of how the team did and what we've got here.
Okay, so the team qualified for the district championship because they earned the second place in the Inspire Award at one of the qualifying competitions. Now, an Inspire Award, it's kind of like the award that is awarded to the team that is like a model first team, like the one that all the other teams should look to. So they came very close to first. They got second.
Okay.
And it just means that they were a high contender for all the judged awards. I think there are like 7 or 8 judged awards.
Okay.
So at the district championship, they did really well. Well, I'll tell you about these first. So we have here the Connect Award.
Okay.
So this is the one about how well we connect to our STEM community, like I was talking about that Library Bot for a Day program.
Right.
So I think the judges really liked that, and so that got us the first place for the Connect Award. And then this one was the Think Award. So another important aspect of FIRST is your documentation.
Oh, okay.
And so that was actually the award given to the team that did the best job with their engineering notebook. And so the engineering notebook is where you track all of your work. Like, the idea is that you're supposed to be able to hand it to somebody and they could look at it and they could
go and
recreate your
Cool.
robot.
Cool.
So they got the Think Award for that one. And then at the district championship, there were a lot of really strong competitors there. It was so fun to get to see all of them in person again.
Right.
The robot did not do as well as they had hoped.
Oh.
It was funny. There were just a lot of really strange, unforeseen things that happened. Some of them, in retrospect, were like, okay, we probably could have prepared for that, but a lot of them we just really couldn't. It's just one of those luck of the draw type things.
Right.
But they did perform well. The kids kept smiles on their faces throughout, and they had a really good time meeting everyone. And they also ended up coming out with a third place award. And I think it was for the Connect Award again.
Cool.
Yeah, so they did really well.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, last question for you. I believe that this is your last year, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, my son's a senior. I'm probably going to still come back and consult because I just really love these kids, and I can't really just abandon them.
Well, that's okay because that doesn't change the question. I was going to. It would just help the question if that makes any sense.
All right.
But I'm just curious as a parent to see your child, see your son go through this and over the years and I'm just curious as a parent what it's meant to you to see him take part in this program.
It's been awesome. To be honest, when he was younger, he was awkward and not comfortable talking with people.
Right.
There's still some of that because all teenagers have that, but I've seen how this program has really pushed him outside of his comfort zone and done it with something that he loves already. And so he's been able to gain these skills. I remember being at a competition when he was a freshman, and I hadn't really been as involved with the team that year, so I wasn't sure how involved he was with the robot. And I saw them rush the robot off the field, bring it to him in the pits, and they were like, "You got to fix it." They're like telling him all this stuff, and he's like dismantling the whole thing and putting it back together. And I'm just going, I did not know you knew how to do that. And I was just astonished because, and the kids that were sitting there biting their nails waiting for him to get it done were like, we're juniors and seniors, and they're just like, "Oh, can you do it?"
Right.
So it was just really cool because there's that mentorship too. They took him under their wing. So it's so much of it is kids teaching other kids too.
Cool.
The mentors ask the right questions, but yeah, I've seen his confidence grow. He's been in an engineering program at Bird that was sparked, I think, by his love for robotics, and now he wants to go into graphic design, and he's just all of these things. He's been able to develop his passion and just form some really strong friendships as well. He's had so much fun with the team.
Awesome. Well, Kasey, thank you very much for coming on the podcast. I appreciate it.
Sure. Thanks for having us.
I'm now joined by two of the students here for the Library Bots. I got Tyson, I got Kayla here. Guys, welcome to the podcast. How are you?
We're doing great.
Good.
I really appreciate you coming on the show and talking a little bit about your experience with the team. Let's start first and talk a little bit about sort of how long you've been doing it. Tyson, how long have you been involved in all this?
So I've been doing this for around 7 years, ever since I joined in middle school.
Cool. Kayla, what about you?
I've been on a robotics team for about 6 years now, too.
Cool. And in terms of the things that you've sort of gotten out of it, right? What kind of lessons do you feel like you've learned? Tyson, let's start with you.
So back when I joined the team, I was a very introverted person. I had a lot of trouble talking to people. But ever since I've been on here, not only have I learned about robotics and building and being a team player, but I've also learned social skills as well, because one of the big parts of competitions is being able to talk to judges and to explain your team.
Right. What about you, Kayla? What do you feel like has really changed, or something you've learned?
I think I've learned a lot, like what he said, just to be more outgoing. But
Right.
as well with that, when I was younger, before I joined, I thought that I couldn't be involved in robotics because
Right.
I didn't think I was very good at math.
Right.
And it showed me that you may not think you're good at math, but you can. There's like a lot more
That you can
to
do.
it.
Right. Now, what was it about robotics in the first place? Like, what was it about that you thought, I want to go try this out? What was it about robotics that got you interested in the first place?
So a family friend, she was on the team, and she was like, "Hey, it seems like something you'd be into. Come join my team." So I did.
Yeah. So you had someone who kind of like showed you the way, so to speak.
Yes.
What about you? What was it about that it really drew you to it, you think?
So the way that I actually first found the team is that they were doing an outreach event, which is one of the big parts about robotics isn't just robotics, the outreach as well.
Right.
But I went to one of those outreach events not even knowing they're going to be there.
Right.
And I saw them moving this robot around, and it was really cool to see. Like, I thought robots just moved like forward and back like cars, but like this one was going side to side, angling.
Yeah.
And I thought that was really interesting. So at the time, I was actually doing archery as my extracurricular activity, but I was getting bored of that. So I'm like, this looks like a much more fun thing I could be doing.
Now, in terms of the robots you guys have designed over the years, what's been your favorite? Which one is the one that you think of the most?
So this year's robot has been very special. I mean, he's really been like a robot that the entire team has put their soul and heart into.
Right.
Although I do have to say I do have a personal favorite, which was one the year before quarantine started, which we called Napoleon Blown Apart because he kept on breaking so much.
So why did he break so much? What was the problem with Napoleon Blown Apart?
Oh, blown apart.
Blown apart, sorry.
Problem is that the system that we were using to build at the time, which is called Tetrix, it's a lot more flimsy compared to what we have now, which is called Go Builda.
Okay.
So we had to be replacing motors and servos because it just wasn't built to handle the intense things we're putting it through.
Gotcha. And in terms of like, I asked your mom a few minutes ago, the idea of, how do you control the thing? And I realize that it's a remote control, but I'm just curious, like how you guys have to basically build all of that, right? Mm-hmm. Talk me through a little bit of how you can actually control the robot.
There's a lot into it because we're both builders, so we're not really quite sure. I don't know anything about programming personally.
That's really interesting that you. Yeah. Okay, that's cool.
So that's a lot of it is communication with the programmers, being like, I know you can do something like this. Tell me how that works.
Right.
And it's just we'll put things together and then we hand it to them and then they scramble. It's a lot of communication between the two parts.
Yeah.
So usually the way that it works is that they'll take one of the functions on an Xbox controller and they'll tie it into a certain motor or servo.
Okay.
And then they could either have it run at like full power, half power, run partially, stop, run again and stop. So basically the phone that's connected to the controller, it basically talks to the module that's on the robot that's meant to talk to, and that's how it communicates.
Cool. Now, in terms of the challenges that you face throughout a season, you start in the fall and you're working on the robot, and then obviously you've got competition coming and all that fun stuff. What are some of the things that happen throughout? I'm guessing that thing breaks. I'm guessing there's lots of stuff that goes wrong throughout. What's been the hardest thing to, maybe the one blowing up was probably the hardest one, but I'm just curious over the years, since you guys have done it for so long, what have been some of the most unique scenarios that you faced in terms of trying to, oh man, that's not good?
So this is a problem that we had especially with this robot, although I know back before I joined the team, they also may have had some problems with this due to different games that they've played. But as you can see on our robot, it has a very big head. And when it was driving around, it had like trouble moving the head up and down because the motor just wasn't powerful enough.
Gotcha.
So we added a counterweight to the back thinking that would solve our problem. The other problem is when we went backwards and stopped, the robot would fall on its back.
Right, yeah, right.
So we had to add a counterweight for the counterweight to counter the counterweight.
Yeah.
Oh, counterweight for all the counterweights.
Yep.
Kayla, as you've done this for 6 years now, what have been some of the sort of lessons that you've learned? How do you feel like you have changed as you've gone through this?
Oh, goodness. It's like, I don't really categorize that. I definitely know a lot more about building. I joined when I was like 11, and I have no clue what I was doing. I just kind of I would just put things together as I was told to, but and I know how to build a robot now. I don't really know how to word that besides I didn't, and now I do.
What about the competition side? Because it sounds like, it's not just about competition, right? There's a lot more that goes into it. There's a lot of sportsmanship, for lack of a better description, right? Mm-hmm. Gracious professionalism is obviously a big focus. Yeah. So I'm just curious from that standpoint, what have you guys learned, and how do you sort of see yourselves applying that in like a real world sort of situation, not necessarily during competition and stuff?
So most of the time when you're at a competition, like say for baseball or basketball, you're thinking like, we got to take out that other team, like they are our enemy here. But when you're at the competition, you're seeing everyone there as like friends. You know what they've gone through because you've gone through it yourself. Right. So it helps you apply the idea to treat everyone fairly because you know that they've been putting in the work as well. They've been putting in all the hours, and it helps you just understand those around you as well.
Now, in terms of what you guys were able to do at competition this year, I know obviously there were some challenges that you guys faced that day, but take me through what districts were like this year, and when you look back on it, what will stand out to you?
So this district was particularly fun because they held in this gigantic coliseum. Usually it's in like a high school gym, but this one's really special.
Right.
And usually you arrive there, you get checked in, you get ready for your judges interview, you set up your pits area where you take care of the robot in between matches. You go in there, you do all the judges interviews, and then that's when the games start, where you get assigned a random person to get paired up with.
Right.
So that your opponent in one match could be your ally in another. So, and then it just goes on matches throughout the day, and then once all the matches are done, they get to the elimination rounds, which is the highest scoring teams. They go against each other, and from there they decide the winner.
Gotcha. So in terms of the challenges you guys faced, what do you feel like was the thing that helped you get through, not necessarily from the competition, but just in terms of your own nerves, your own excitement? What helped you get through that without feeling, angry or upset or anything like that?
I think it helped a lot knowing that everyone else is nervous.
Right.
Everyone else is a little
kind of in the same boat. Yeah, I got you. What about you?
And then one of the things that really helped me is realizing how far we'd already come, because like this was the district championship. Like not many teams get to be able to go there. So just being there by itself is a huge opportunity.
Absolutely.
It's amazing to be there.
All right, last question. I believe you're both seniors? Both seniors?
I'm a junior.
Junior,
Yeah.
okay. You're a senior. What's it like to think that this was your last one, right? That the thing is, that's your last robot, at least for this competition. I'm guessing, you're going to be involved in some ways, but I'm just curious, what was it like to have your last one?
Not going to lie, it was pretty sad realizing that was going to be the last competition I had to go to. But it was also nice, though, realizing, like, I started off this team when I first came and joined. I was, like, the kid that sat in the corner. I was, like, waiting for a job to be done. And then now here I am, like, overseeing building of large sections of the robot. So it was great being able to be on the team, but also realizing that I'll be able to help mentor in the future is amazing.
Cool. Well, I really appreciate you guys coming on the podcast and talking a little bit about your robots and everything you do here. Thanks so much.
Thank you for having us.
All right. I want to thank Kasey and the kids for letting us come here and film the show today. I also want to make sure everybody out there can follow us on social media. On Twitter, it's at Chesterfield VA. And on Instagram, it's Chesterfield, Virginia, all one word. Facebook, check out our podcast page, Behind the Mic. Make sure you like that page so you can keep up with us as we go forward. Now, let me tell you about all the ways you can watch the show. You can watch us on our YouTube channel. It's on our website, chesterfield.gov/podcast. An audio-only version of the show is available there, as well as on all of the different services, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, wherever it is. You can also watch the podcast on WCCT Thursday through Sunday at 7, on the weekends at noon. That's Comcast Channel 98 and Verizon Channel 28. And lastly, check out chesterfield.gov/connect with us. More information for ways for we can get in touch with you. You can get in touch with us. My thanks to my executive producer, Susan Pollard, all the folks here at Communications and Media for making this possible. And my thanks to you for checking us out today. So from all of us here in Chesterfield, thank you very much for making this part of your day. We'll see you again real soon. Take good care.